July 30th, 1944. Normandy Bocage. An entire battalion of Shermans was about to be annihilated in a perfectly planned German ambush. 3 Panthers waited for them in elevated positions. The math was simple. American 75mm guns against 80mm German frontal armor at over 800 meters. Impossible. Suicide. Guaranteed defeat. But Sergeant Curtis G. Culin had done something no field manual authorized. Something his superiors called military vandalism. Something that would save 47 lives that day and change the war in Europe. 6 weeks after D-Day, Operation Cobra was suffocating. The American army expected to sweep through France in weeks. Instead, it was bleeding in the Normandy hedgerows, a medieval labyrinth of earthen walls 6 to 12 feet high, covered by centuries-old bushes and roots that felt like reinforced concrete. The Germans turned every field into a fortress, every hedgerow a natural trench, and the M4 Shermans, America's workhorse, with its 30 tons and 75mm gun, became mobile death traps. And there was a problem nobody had foreseen, a design flaw that would cost thousands of lives. When a Sherman tried to climb a hedgerow, its nose pitched violently upward, exposing the belly armor, the tank's weakest point, with only 25mm of steel. It was like offering your throat to the enemy. German gunners knew exactly where to aim. Between June 6th and July 24th, 1944, the Allies lost over 500 tanks in Normandy alone. Sherman crew mortality rates exceeded 60% after the first month of combat. American soldiers had a sinister nickname for their own tanks: Zippos, lighters that caught fire on the first strike. It was in this green hell that Curtis G. Culin, a cavalry sergeant from the 2nd Armored Division, looked at a piece of German steel and had an idea his officers would consider insane. Curtis G. Culin Jr. wasn't an engineer. He was 29 years old, from Cranford, New Jersey, and before the war he worked as a salesman. But he had something many Detroit engineers didn't. He was scared to death, and that made him creative. With every attack, he watched his buddies turn to ash inside steel coffins, watched commanders hesitate before ordering an advance, because they knew it meant choosing who would die first. But Culin noticed something the generals ignored. The solution wasn't in Washington headquarters, it was in the rubble around him. Normandy was littered with Rommel's asparagus, anti-invasion obstacles made of steel beams designed to tear apart landing craft. Tons upon tons of high-quality German steel, scattered across beaches and fields. Culin started welding these pieces onto the front of Sherman's, 4-pointed prongs like bull horns. The idea was simple but radical. Instead of the tank climbing the hedgerow and exposing its belly, the prongs would pierce the base, allowing the Sherman to cut through earth and roots while staying level. He called it the Rhino, the Rhinoceros Device. His superiors called it something else: destruction of military property, unauthorized modification, violation of maintenance protocol. But there was something nobody knew yet, something that would make this illegal modification absolutely vital. July 19, 1944. Culin presented his prototype to Lieutenant Colonel Arthur W. Salisbury. The reaction was immediate. "Sergeant, you've defaced a United States Army combat vehicle. This could result in a court-martial." But Salisbury wasn't stupid. He'd seen the same charred bodies, the same exploded turrets. And he did something risky. He authorized a field test, unofficially. On July 20th, a Sherman equipped with the Rhino Device crossed 12 consecutive hedgerows in 15 minutes, without exposing its belly armor once. A conventional Sherman would take 45 minutes, and probably wouldn't survive the 3rd hedgerow. Word reached General Omar Bradley. He immediately realized that vandalized modification could determine the success or failure of Operation Cobra, the offensive that would break the Normandy stalemate. Bradley gave an unprecedented order: equip 500 tanks with Rhino devices in less than a week. All armored divisions in Normandy would receive absolute priority. Soldiers worked 18-hour days, cut every piece of German steel they could find. Field workshops transformed into improvised assembly lines. By July 25th, 5 days later, 60% of American armored forces in France had Rhino prongs. But nobody knew if it would work in actual combat, under fire, against Panthers and Tigers, with lives at stake. They would find out in less than 48 hours. July 30th, 1944, 6:47 hours. Near Saint-Gilles, southern Normandy. The 3rd Armored Battalion of the 2nd Armored Division was advancing through the Bocage when the nightmare began. 3 Panther OSF. G emerged on the hills ahead. Perfect position. Distance, 850 meters. A Panther could penetrate a Sherman's frontal armor at 1,200 meters. A Sherman needed to get within 500 meters and aim for the sides to have any chance. The first Sherman exploded before it could rotate its turret. The second tried to retreat and got stuck in mud. The third began to burn. 18 Shermans remaining. 3 Panthers. Certain death. But 13 of those Shermans had something the Germans didn't expect. Captain James M. Burt, battalion commander, made the most insane decision of his career. Instead of retreating or attempting long-distance combat, he ordered a frontal assault through the hedgerows. The Shermans with Rhino devices cut through hedgerows like butter. They didn't climb. They didn't expose. They simply punched through, keeping their guns forward, their turrets stabilized, their frontal armor protecting the crews. In 4 minutes and 30 seconds, the Shermans covered 850 meters through impossible terrain. The Panthers didn't expect this. Their commanders hesitated. Precious seconds lost recalculating trajectories, repositioning. The Shermans opened fire at 320 meters, suicidal range, but now lethal. 6 tanks concentrated fire on the first Panther. Its turret exploded. The second tried to retreat and took 3 rounds to the side. The third managed to destroy 2 more Shermans before being surrounded and set ablaze. When silence returned, 47 men were still alive inside their Shermans. Without the Rhino device, post-battle estimates calculated fewer than 12 would have survived. Curtis Culin's illegal modification had just changed the rules of tank warfare in Europe. By the end of August 1944, over 3,000 Allied tanks operated with Rhino devices or variations of it. Sherman crew survival rates in Bocage terrain increased by 34%. Advance speed tripled. Operation Cobra broke through German lines in 48 hours, something that had seemed impossible for 6 weeks. Paris was liberated on August 25th. The race across France finally began. Curtis Culin was promoted, received the Legion of Merit, and never returned to selling anything in New Jersey. He became a technical consultant for the Army, an expert in field modifications. But the story of the Rhino teaches us something beyond military engineering. It teaches us that solutions don't only come from laboratories or design offices. Sometimes they come from a terrified soldier looking at enemy scrap and seeing salvation. Generals plan wars, but it's the sergeants, mechanics, and enlisted men who win them, with creativity born from desperation. The Rhino device was never officially adopted by the U.S. Army. After Normandy, it was no longer necessary. But during those crucial months of 1944, those illegally welded steel prongs were the difference between victory and massacre. Conservative estimates suggest the Rhino saved between 500 and 800 American lives during the Normandy campaign. Culin never filed for a patent, never collected royalties. When asked why, he answered simply, "You don't profit from your friend's survival." What about you? Did you know the story of the Rhino device? Do you think field modifications should be encouraged or prohibited? Leave your opinion in the comments. I want to know what you think.